And we have, next up, Dean Hudson is a user experience designer at Atlassian working on JIRA. Dean joined Atlassian last fall and has previous design experience at Microsoft and Yahoo! A keen photographer who enjoys a fine ale and is a proud member of the Wall Ball International JIRA Chapter. Welcome, Dean.
Great, thank you. Great, hello everyone. My name's Dean Hudson, and I'm a UX designer on the JIRA team. And so what I wanted to kind of talk today about was how we do design on JIRA team. Hang on a second. Just get my notes up, sorry. So here at Atlassian, we're big on collaboration. Not only do we build collaboration tools, but we also work in a very collaborative way across the whole product team. So in my talk today, I'm going to be talking about the benefits of a collaborative approach, share some of the tools and techniques we use internally, and also talk about some of the ways you can work with your customers to make sure that you're building the right thing. So the first thing I want to talk about is collaborative design. But what does this actually mean, and how is it different from a traditional process? So traditional product design follows quite a linear process. Features are spec'd by the PM team, and then the designers will then go away and take those requirements and build some wireframes and some screens, which they'll hand over to the developers to implement. Developers will then ship that to the customer, and then the product team kind of has to wait for feedback or analytics to kind of find out if that feature was a success or not. So while this is quite a straightforward process, there are a few problems with it. So the first thing is there's no ownership of the feature or alignment between the teams. There's no communication between the product team and the customer. And most importantly, the product is only ever looked at through the lens of a single team. So with collaborative design, it's all about getting multiple perspectives on a problem. So what that really means is not designing in a vacuum. You need to understand the business needs of the product as much as you need to understand how people are actually going to use that product. So with a collaborative approach, designers work with other stakeholders and to get multiple perspectives on the problem. In order to arrive at an effective solution, you need to have a deep understanding of the problem, so you can't just sit down and design from what's in your own head. It's kind of like the fog of war in strategy games like Civilization. When you first get started, you've only got a single unit and you can only see like a very small part of the map. So you kind of need to create additional units and send them out into the world to explore and reveal more of that map to you. And through doing that, you can see areas of opportunity, you can see threats, and you can really find the best place where you can set up your city and start to build. And that's really the purpose of collaborative design. It's to draw out information, understand different, even competing points of view, and get feedback from your users. And it's really about creating a meeting place where everyone can work together. So as well as helping the designer get a better understanding of the problem, there's also three main benefits that come from a collaborative approach. The first one is ownership. So if you work separately from customers and stakeholders, they don't have any direct investment in what you produce. You have to sell in your designs because you need to communicate all of the factors that went into your process. But if you contrast that with a more collaborative approach, where you involve customers and stakeholders from the beginning, in that case, everybody is involved in the decisions that produce the final designs, and you no longer need to sell the result, because the rest of the team owns that design as much as you do. The second benefit is alignment. One of the biggest problems we all face in product design is getting everyone on the same page regarding the vision for what's being built. A tried and tested method for getting everybody to understand a project in the same way is to have everybody working together throughout the project. So having the relevant people available and involved throughout the design process means you don't have to rely as much on requirements documents, because the more a team collectively understands what it's doing and why, the less it has to depend on second-hand reports and detailed documents to continue its work. But while the collaborative approach gives everyone's ideas a place to be heard, there's no way you can build all of those conflicting ideas into a single product. It's not a committee because honestly, if you try and make everyone happy, you're going to end up with a camel. Or as Jürgen, our head of design, puts it, a camel is a fucked up horse, and don't ship fucked up horses. The set of design choices in any problem is almost infinite, but through collaboration, we can really balance the pros and cons of these choices, resulting in more considered features and overall better products. So what are some collaborative techniques you can use to avoid shipping a camel? Well, we'll take a look at 3 of the methods we use at JIRA: workshops, design spikes, and making your work visible. So the earlier that collaboration occurs, the better. We usually like to kick things off with a workshop to scope out the project and really get any constraints and assumptions out of the way right at the beginning. And our workshops include designers, PMs, developers, and really any other stakeholder that can provide insight. But everyone that's involved is someone responsible for doing the actual work. Jay Rogers gave a really good talk earlier today, which kind of went into a lot of detail around the different types of workshops that we run. So I'd encourage you following up and trying to find the slides for that later on if you're interested in that. But yeah, each workshop is structured around the unique problem being solved. But I can kind of talk you through an example of one we recently ran with the JIRA team. So we were looking at building a new feature, and we booked out a 2-day workshop to get things started. And we've got a really cool workshop space in Atlassian. It's kind of custom designed for that purpose. It's really nice open space. It has kind of movable desks and chairs. It has a lot of whiteboard space. It has a lot of drawing tools like pens and paper, and it's really good just for running things like this. So we booked that room out for 2 days, and we invited the rest of the product team down to attend. 2 days can be quite a long time to commit to, so it's a really good idea to kind of break those days down into smaller sessions so people can kind of rotate in or rotate out as they have other commitments. But maybe have one person commit to facilitating the whole thing and also having a core group of people that are going to be there for the duration, just to kind of promote some kind of continuity and also keep the momentum going. So for the morning session of this workshop, we wanted to scope out the project and clearly define the problem and any of the assumptions that we had coming in. So we wrote these main points down on cards and we stuck them up on the wall that we could refer back to throughout the rest of the session. And then next we mapped out the entire user flow as it existed today in a user journey. So it's basically just drawing a line and just plotting out different points along there which kind of called out all the key states that happened and things that the user interacted with and things that the system was spitting back out. And it really helps to give you an overview of how people are achieving that goal today. And you can start to identify any bottlenecks or areas of friction that you can improve upon. So then once we had that user journey mapped out, we broke down into smaller groups and we basically wanted to improve that user flow. So you could either kind of take those pain points that we'd already identified and try and remove them and improve the existing flow, or people came up with completely new flows that solved the same problem but in a completely different way. And then we'd get those smaller groups to present back to the wider team and we'd critique the work that was coming up with and we'd really try and iterate and refine and come up with maybe 1 or 2 solutions that we thought were going to be the best ones to move forward and then spend a bit more time adding detail to those ones. So once we had like a user flow, which we kind of thought was going to be a good one to run with, we started sketching out individual screens against each of the steps in that flow. So they're just basically rough little drawings to be like, okay, on this is a login screen and then this is going to happen, but basically just adding a little bit more detail that we can kind of pick up and run with. So that's a really important point for workshops is to make sure you have plenty of sketching materials at hand so the team can visualize their ideas. If you can draw the idea that you're trying to describe, it really helps to clarify it for the rest of the team. And if you can draw a circle, a square, and a triangle, you can really draw any interface that's out there. It's a little secret, I guess, for interface design, and it's really true. The goal isn't to make everyone into an artist, but it's really just to open up the design process and just let everyone in on that discussion. You can see here are some examples we created from a recent workshop, and like they're no masterpieces, they're just a rough assembly of geometric shapes, but they really help to articulate the idea and get everyone on the same page so everyone knows what you're talking about. And then after a workshop, we'll kind of transition to a design spike, which is basically just like a short focused sprint of design work. So there'll be usually 2 or 3 designers working together to take the outcomes of that workshop, so to take those really rough sketches and refine them to the next level of fidelity, which can be either wireframes, they can be polished high-res designs, or they can be a prototype. But each feature really has a different requirement. So with JIRA, we kind of like to relocate to a different space when we're doing a design spike to get some focus, get away from our desks and the day-to-day distractions. We'll find somewhere quiet, we'll put on some music, and we'll just sit side by side for a couple of days and just start bouncing ideas off each other and cranking out the work. Because collaboration can occur at a macro level with the whole team, but it can also happen at a really micro level just with one or two other people as well. But the idea is to keep it short and focused and set regular deadlines and review sessions with the rest of the team. Which brings me to the next section on making work visible. So the output from the workshop and the design spike should be shared with the other stakeholders for feedback and discussion. You really want to share early and share often because it's much easier to change a wireframe or a Photoshop document than it is to change working code further down the track. So one of the ways we do this at Atlassian is by just printing out all of our work or taking sketches and just sticking them right up on the wall. This way you can visualize the entire flow, and it's not just kind of getting focused on isolated screens that you'd get in like a PDF or something like that. And it also encourages discussion, so you can kind of bring your team over and you can start to have a chat in front of this wall, and you can kind of start writing comments and questions down on Post-it notes and stick them up against the relevant screens in the flow. And again, our space at Atlassian in the Sydney office is really built for this. We've painted all of our walls in whiteboard paints, and if you walk down the hallways, they're just covered in design artifacts and Post-it notes and scrawled notes on the walls as well. It's really quite cool because you can walk past, say like I work in the JIRA team, and if I'm walking down the hallway and the Confluence team is working down there, I can kind of immediately see all the cool stuff they're working on, and I can be like, oh, hey man, like what's this feature? This looks really interesting. And it kind of starts to just promote discussions between different design teams as well and really share that design thinking. And this is what happened after that design spike that I was talking about earlier. So, we posted those designs up on the wall, we brought the product team over to review, and had some really good conversations around that work. And just made sure that everyone was on board and everyone was kind of pulling in the right direction, and we weren't making any kind of decisions that we would have to reverse later down the track. We could have wasted days if we just did like a big bang design reveal at the end of a week, as opposed to just kind of sharing things every day and then correcting course if we needed to. If your company doesn't have a good space like that, or if you work with remote teams, you can always use digital tools like Confluence as well is a good one. So you can post your work up, and then you use the comments section below as like a digital wall where you can start to have conversations. If you guys saw Mike's keynote this morning, they're doing some really interesting things around inline commenting on documents. So that's only going to get better in the future as well. So far we've been looking at collaboration with the product team, but there's really another important set of people you should be working with as well, which is your customers. So user experience design works at the intersection between the business and the customer. Each one has different goals and needs and a different language, and the role of a designer is really to find the overlap between those two and push them towards each other. And it's impossible to do this well if you're only listening to one side of the conversation. So you need to be designing with your users, not for your users, and you really need to understand the problem as they see it. So this is a really cool example. It's kind of like, the path that they've designed here, it's solving a specific problem, but it's not solving the right problem. And so, if you actually talk to your users and understand what they're trying to achieve and observe how they're currently solving that solution, you can really come up with something quite effective. So when should you be talking to your customers? Well, at Atlassian, we do it all the time. So you want to set up a regular cadence where your team can interact with the people who will be using the products they're creating every week if you can. Because getting regular customer feedback has a really powerful effect on the team. It takes the pressure away from a lot of decision making because you know that you're only ever a few days away from getting valuable insights from the actual people who are going to be using your products. And there's a number of ways that we do this. We do contextual inquiries, we do usability testing, we do remote video interviews, and we do conferences like this as well. But one of my favorite ones is actually usability testing. So we experimented with a new approach recently on JIRA. We weren't testing a specific piece of UI, it was more of like an architecture problem. There's a new navigation thing for JIRA, which Mike also showed this morning, a sidebar that we've been experimenting with. So we had that model and we wanted to test to see if it could adapt to the different ways that our users had set up their projects. So we just invited a whole bunch of people in for a round of usability testing. And the way that we had structured these sessions was that they ran for an hour, And for the first half hour, we basically just had a conversation with them, and we just wanted to find out how their team was structured, how they organized their project, how they worked, how many boards they used, all those kinds of things. And as my colleague was facilitating the interview, I was taking all of the information that the customer was giving us and building that into a prototype. So then for the second half of the session, we turned the laptop around and we revealed the design that we'd been working on and had a conversation around that and how that was solving the customer's problem. And it was really quite powerful because it had their real data in there, real things that they could connect with, as opposed to just lorem ipsum text or stock photos or anything like that. It was actually their real content. And it ended up being a really successful series of tests, and I think it's something we're going to persevere with in the future. But we also really wanted to involve the rest of the team with this process. So this was just myself and another designer sitting in a room facilitating, but it would have been a bit daunting to invite in 6 or 8 other people from the product team to sit there and observe when we just have one customer sitting there. So what we do sometimes is we'll set up a remote viewing room and we'll have a video stream from the interview room back to this viewing room where the rest of the team can sit, and they can take notes while we're in there just having a small chat with the customer. And that they'll be taking notes down as we're talking, writing them on post-it notes, and then just sticking them up on the wall. So then afterwards, we can all come in together as a team and we'll have a bit of a debrief, and we'll take all of those notes that we've been writing and we'll start grouping them into themes on the wall and start to identify common threads. And with those common threads, we'll distill them down into a series of insights, which we can then just write up and we can share out with the rest of the team. And it's just a lot smaller, digestible kind of chunks of information as opposed to having to read through like a full transcript of an interview. And it's being created by the whole team. It's not just one researcher that's kind of pulling out their insights that they think are valuable. So taking a collaborative approach to research gets the entire team to meet with and learn from customers. It gives everyone on the team a chance to see how the hypotheses are testing, and most importantly, it multiplies the number of inputs the team can use to gather customer insight. So just a few key takeaways from what I've been talking about today. We talked a little bit about collaboration and the multiple perspectives giving you a deeper understanding of the problem. We talked about creating ownership and alignment between teams and how it provides shared understanding between teams and requires less documentation. The next section we talked about was some collaboration tools. So kicking off with a workshop to align the team and share ideas. Then transitioning to focused design spikes where we visualize and clarify all the workshop decisions. And then making sure that you share that work out with the rest of the team and really encourage discussion. And then the last section was about talking to your customers and really listening to your customers. So the people using your product should help you shape that product. You want to get regular customer input to help you make the right product decisions. And you want to get the whole team involved. It's really powerful for everyone to see firsthand the problems your customers are having. And that's been my talk today, so thank you very much for coming. I hope you found it useful.
Thank you, Dean. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. We want to roll over to the Confluence site. Do your developers ever feel the collaborative process is wasting their time, meaning they'd rather be coding?
No, I found like our developers, they love like being involved in the whole process. I mean, I think previous places I've worked where it has just been, hand over the fence thing, and they just basically like get a spec and they're like, this is something we want you to build. Letting them have a voice right from the beginning, there's so much valuable stuff that they can bring to the table, which, as a designer or as a PM, we don't have that perspective on the problem. So there might be some code dependency why we can't do something a certain way, or they might see some efficiency that they can create. We could do something in a completely new way. So no, I don't think they find it's wasting their time at all. They seem to really love being involved in an early process, as does everyone else. Like PM, design, everyone loves kind of shaping the ideas as opposed to just having something put on their lap that they need to build from.
Great. Do we have one more question off of Confluence?
So how does Atlassian do the design dev handoff? We do it in a lot of different ways. So like different teams work in different ways. On the JIRA, we have like the ADG, the Atlassian Design Guidelines, which is, if you guys go to design.atlassian.com, you can check that out. So it's basically a whole set of guidelines so that developers can build products, I guess, without having a designer. It kind of has a whole set of patterns and things like that which they can lean upon. So we don't really need to kind of spec things out in pixel perfect kind of things. Like this is this color and this is 10 pixels away from this. We can They can really work from just a really rough sketch, basically. If it's like, this is a new form that we want to build, we don't really have to kind of go much further than that. But if it's something new, if it's a new pattern, we'll get a lot more in depth and we'll start, creating much more high fidelity designs. So it really kind of depends on what we're building.
All right, I think we're out of time at this point. Thank you, Dean.